Comedians Monique and D.L. Hughley had an unexpected feud to take place this week over who was going to be the headliner of a comedy show. Now, over the weekend, Monique performed during the Comedy Explosion in Detroit, and she actually called out D.L. Hughley, alleging that he refused to perform at the event if she was listed as the headliner.
I fucks with contracts. That's why niggas got a problem with me. If you sign the motherfucking contract, that's what the f it is. But they're so used to niggas f***ing around with the contract and being nervous because they might lose an opportunity or a motherfucking chance, so they will redo the contract. I'm not a bitch who's gonna redo the contract. If you sign the motherfucker, that's what the motherfucker is. So tonight, see, I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna break it down for you, Detroit, because I would feel less than a motherfucking woman if I didn't let y'all know what the what's going on this stage right now. So if my energy is a little different, because they got me f***ed up. They got me up. They got me up. So the contract, oh nigga. The motherfucking contract said that a bitch is the headliner. The headliner. Let me say it again. The headliner. That's what the motherfucking contract says. Monique is to be the last motherfucking person on the goddamn stage. She is the headliner. That's what I signed the up for. I'm 30 plus years in this motherfucking business, and I don't open for no goddamn body. The contract said the headliner. The contract said the headliner. The contract said the headliner. But a named D.L. Hughley turned into a and said, I won't perform if she does that. I won't go out if she does that. You open for the kings of comedy, I close for the queens of comedy. And you think that I don't have a that ain't my position. So when I leave this motherfucker, the headliner has left. I don't with nobody. I don't with no body. But when you cross the line with me, nigga, you have crossed the motherfucking line. And that bitch has crossed the motherfucking line. See, we got a history. We got a history. That nigga went on a tour talking about all Monique wasn't. You can Google it right now. D.L. Hughley with Monique, all I wasn't, what I wasn't worth, all of this bullshit, and then put your feet under my motherfucking table. So you came to my home, and you put your feet under my motherfucking table. I don't get down like that, goddammit. You got a bit wrong. You talk about Young Thug, and because of their names, your name is D.L. What the f*** does it stand for? Hey!
Now, it wasn't long before the video made its rounds and made its way back to D.L. Hughley's desk because he ended up having a few things to say to Monique. And he took to Instagram to say this: all you have to do is check the order of names on the ticket stub from last night and you'll see who's confused. Against my better judgment over the objections of my team and for other occasions where I said no, I decided to take a chance and work with Monique. Oprah was the problem. Tyler Perry was the problem. Charlemagne was the problem. Steve Harvey was the problem. Lee Daniels was the problem. Netflix was the problem. Now it's my turn. At some point, it can't be everyone else. It has to be you. Lesson learned, I didn't have anything personal against Monique. People paid a lot of money to laugh, not hear about your contract. Apparently, the role you played in Precious turned out to be an autobiography. I wonder who's next. Well, wasting absolutely no time, Monique decided to hop under that very post to share more of her thoughts. And she lets D.L. Hughley know this: the fact that you point the people to the ticket stubs for the order of the names versus to your contract implies that you don't have a contract that shows you are the headliner like I do. Either show your contract or shut up. Stop messing with people who have never messed with you and considered you a comrade in comedy. But I thank you, DL, because you're the reason why I fight for my people like I do. Anytime you open for the Kings of Comedy and I was the headliner for the Queens of Comedy and you think you should close the show over me is an example of the bias that Black women have to deal with in this business. I won't even discuss awards. Now, of course, the back and forth continued to happen with DL Hughley posting to Instagram of what appears to be his deal memo of his performance. And this memo actually stated that DL Hughley was the headline act for the comedy explosion and that he was the person that was supposed to close out the show. Now, he ended up captioning these images by saying, listen, after this, I don't want to hear no more about this. If you have a problem, take it up with management. And by that, I mean yours. And of course, in good fashion, Miss Monique decided to follow up with her own documentation, confirming that she was actually the headliner. She held that spot and she was actually supposed to close out the show. Now, if you ask me, it seems like the promoters were the ones that messed up. It looks like Mr. DL submitted a memo that's not necessarily a contract, but there was some type of agreement that he had with the promoters. And Miss Monique decided to submit a contract that she actually got signed and sealed as well. So I just feel like the fault is primarily on the promoters. They were the ones that was just trying to make sure they booked both of you guys so they can make whatever money that they need to make. Now, I don't know if they were thinking that you guys were going to be co-headliners or that it was even going to be a problem. Maybe this is something that they do all the time. However, it hit ahead this time, and I blame the promoters. Now, what I will also say is that I don't think Monique was lying. I would not be surprised if Mr. Hughley did throw a fit based on what was in his contract, right? What was in his contract was an understanding that he was going to be the headliner and that he was going to be able to close out the show. So then you give him the day of and he's not the person closing out the show. I definitely can see him throwing a hissy fit, right? I definitely can see that. So I don't think that Monique was lying when it comes to that. But I do understand why both of them feel that they should be the headliner based on their careers, right? Based on their experience, but they have about the same amount, right? I think that Monique, like she said, she closed for Queens of Comedy. He opened for Kings of Comedy. It doesn't matter what end of the stick you were on, but guess what? Y'all both did a Kings and Queens of Comedy show. They also both went on to have their own television show at some point. So y'all have both accomplished about the same. Now, I do think that Monique probably should have been the one with the headliner. Feel how y'all want to feel. I think she probably was more deserving of having that headliner role on that particular event, because Monique has kind of, in my opinion, surpassed DL Hughley when it comes to her career. I say that because she has actually been able to go off and do film, whereas I have not seen him go further and do any film like most comedians. I've seen him just stay in his area of doing comedy, right? So yeah, I think that her fan base may be a bit larger than he is actually, which is why I think that she would have been, better deserving of the headliner role. But at the same time, it's comedy. Y'all both are older, middle-aged individuals, and y'all are still able to go out here and still have a career at this day and age. Like, I think that's a blessing. So there really should not be a reason that anybody is really arguing over a headliner spot when y'all are still relevant today. I think that's a great thing. There are a lot of people that have tried, a lot of people that started with you guys, and a lot of people that are not in the same place as you guys. So to make this that big of a deal, it's not clicking, Steven, for me. Okay, now I will say it was a lot going on over there on social media, honey. It was a lot of back and forth. And if the back and forth on social media was not enough, looks like DL decided to do a few radio interviews where he ended up speaking on this beef with Monique.
I work very hard to control the environment I work in community. I only work where I want to work and who I want to work for. I want to work with. I don't work because that is a very precious place for me. I've been offered a gig, a couple of gigs, 3 or 4 gigs to work with Monique in LA, in Brooklyn, in Houston, and I turned them down because I didn't think it would work. So after talking to a lot of people, and one of the very people in this room about how things are different, 2 of the very people in this room, as a matter of fact, and how things are different, and look at how things are coming around, I decided it would be wrong for me not to give somebody a chance based on things that they'd never done to me. That would have been wrong to me. And when she talks, and she goes on her diatribe, and she talks about me having my feet under her table, that was at her invitation. I was doing a gig in Greenbelt, Maryland. She lived in Baltimore. She was having a fight party. It was, I think, Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson. And sure enough, I came to her table at her invitation. And it was a wonderful time. As a matter of fact, it was based on that interaction, along with talking to people, I decided that I would do these gigs. I decided I would do it. And now I know what Tyler Perry knows. I know what Lee Daniels knows. I know what Oprah knows. I know what Steve Harvey knows. I know what Charlamagne the God knows. I know what Netflix knows. Saying yes to Monique is an occupational hazard. Now, we're playing a gig in Detroit this weekend. I know I'm going on at 9:45. I leave the hotel. I get there around 9. Monique had just gotten there. She's supposed to be there at 8:40. She had just gotten there, gone at 8:40. She got there at 8:38. What Monique was trying to do was to slow walk the show. She didn't end up being on for 30 minutes. The oldest trick in the world is, if I want to change the order and I don't have merit, I'll try to make people wait so long that everybody gets nervous and go, please just go on so we can avoid a conflict. That didn't happen. Monique got on stage. Monique actually felt like she had merit. She would have done one of three things. Either she would have took it up with the promoter, and she did, and the promoter said, we're going on, and whether you're going or not, that's a different thing. You would have not done it, but she knew she had to get on stage, or she would have been in breach of contract, or she would have come to talk to me. She didn't ever, and I emphatically emphasize this, she never once talked to me. I haven't seen Monique in years. I didn't see her at the venue before, after, or during. I haven't spoken or seen Monique. So if you really thought that you had a legitimate contract dispute, you would have come to me and said, hey, I have this contract and you have this contract. Notice not one thing on that contract, not one person she has on that contract, not one thing happened. Do you know why? Because it wasn't legitimate. And she goes on stage and she proceeds to eviscerate me. Not just me, but Steve Harvey, the sexual, my wife, my dog later on in subsequent conversation. Let me ask you something. What did any of that have to do with an alleged contract dispute? What did Steve Harvey have to do with your contract? What did I have to do with your contract? What did my dog have to do with your contract? What does my wife have to do with your contract? You wrote your contract, you and your daddy. You proceeded to say things that were so patently insulting that it was galling. It was galling. You asked in subsequent conversations why I have a dog, a support dog. What kind of person has a support dog? I have that dog because my father died. My children and family decided they would get a dog from where he was from, and I named the dog after my father. I don't have a dog to keep people away from me. I have a dog so I have my father with me all the time. That is an act of love which you know very little about. You proceeded to assault my sexuality. You have the temerity to assault someone's sexuality, a man's sexuality, given who you lay next to? None of that had anything to do with alleged contract dispute. You could have taken that up with a lawyer. You would have gotten out. You could have not gone on stage, but you knew you didn't have a valid contract. And you do what you always have done. You tried to weaponize black femininity. You tried to turn that audience against me. You tried to burn everything down. Like you do all the time. Who calls Netflix and thinks I can get $10 million because I did the Queens of Comedy? Who thinks you can get on stage and still live off that? I was a king of comedy. You never hear me talking about it because in this business, like any other, it isn't what you have done, it's what you do. That show was one I signed on to do. I made the quintessential mistake, the horrible mistake that like Tyler Perry, like Lee Daniels, like Oprah, like all these people of saying yes to you. And it is an occupational hazard. It is my fault. I have learned my lesson. You didn't just, and the thing that bothers me the most isn't the things that you said, because I know who I am and I know what I do. And I have a pristine reputation. And everybody who knows me know what I'm about. It's this whole, my dear, my babies, I love you for real, which is so transparently false, it is ridiculous. But the thing that was really the most annoying, the thing that was really the most bothersome, is after a terrible couple of weeks where people were being slain in Buffalo, where people were being slain, kids are getting slain in school, and people had come to a comedy show to get away from all of their problems, you besieged them with yours. The one contract that isn't in dispute is the one that the audience had with us to entertain them. But every single time, more and more, you spend half of your time talking about your grievances and what you didn't get and who did this to you. Listen, when you burn things up and you sit back to watch the results of them, she's literally set that stage on fire, said the most incendiary things ever, and I had to go on stage. She has the temerity to call me a coward. A coward would have left. A coward would have said, I can't go. You didn't even want to go on when you had a contract that you knew that not to be true. You made up this whole narrative that you knew not to be true, and you played that out in front of the audience. And then I had to go on behind you. And you know what you did? You sat back and you tried to watch your damage. You set the stage on fire and you watched what you've done. You know who does that? Arsonists do that. Arsonists set shit on fire and try to see the damages right. But I blame myself because I know now what I didn't before. Saying yes to you is an occupational hazard, one I will not repeat. I don't blame you. I wish you well. But when you do the things you do, when everything's about you, when you're vitriolic, when you have all these fights with all of these entities, it is you. Precious was not a movie. Precious was an autobiography. That is who you are, literally. You mad at the contract you and daddy wrote? Your daddy? And I don't know why you call a man daddy and you pay for him. That's a son. Let's be clear. I am not angry with you. I'm angry with me. I did what I knew not to be true. But I'm going to tell you something. When you burn and you destroy and you wreck, you are not a queen of comedy. You're a queen of ashes. And while I'm going to go back to work and you get back to your kingdom of smoke. That's a little.
Well, my goodness, y'all just heard Mr. D.L. Hughley go in and let have on Miss Monique. Okay, I did find it very interesting for him to say that working with her was an occupational hazard. I was a bit confused because I'm like, how you going to say that it was an occupational hazard when you the one that signed up to do it? So how is that her fault that you chose to sign up to work with her, you know? But he ended up, saying at the very end that he blames himself. He doesn't necessarily blame her because he felt like he knew he should have never done it, which was the plan from the very beginning. Now he's saying that he knows the same things that Oprah knows, Lee Daniels, Steve Harvey, amongst others. And I'm not gonna lie, I was thinking to myself, well, what do you know? You know that she's gonna speak out when she feels that she's been done wrong? Is that what you're saying? Because that's what it is that I'm getting, right? But then at the same time, he go on to let us know more about how she did not reach out to him. She had no conversations with him, so he didn't even know that she felt any type of way until she hit the stage, tried to set it on fire, and then here it is, he has to go up behind that. Now, I am glad that DL ended up doing this particular video and sharing it on social media so that we can hear his thoughts outside of just the text messages and things that he's putting out on social media or the captions, right? So I'm glad that he was able to explain things in his side in more context, right? So I can appreciate that. But it seems like Miss Monique and her husband decided to go ahead and do a video of their own where they took to IG Live to share their thoughts more on the situation, and they also invited DL to be a part, which he actually ended up declining.
So listen, this past weekend, it was very eventful. And I had a show at the Fox Theater on Saturday night in Detroit. And y'all have seen a video gone viral with me speaking very openly and candidly about my feelings towards D.L. Hughley, contract, and the past. And as I was on that stage saying what I was saying, let me be clear, it was intentional. It was intentional. The contract situation and the headliner situation, that was just the icing on the cake for D.L. Hughley and I. Then through the years, and I want y'all to hear me, please. Through the years, I've listened to this man talk about all that I'm not, what I didn't deserve. I was mentally ill. I was bitter. Me and my husband did poor business. I was selfish. I was fanatic. I was psychotic. Now, don't take my word, please. You can Google it for yourself, YouTube it for yourself. D.L. Hughley speaks on Monique. And through the years, my babies, I said nothing because I knew the day would come that I would see D.L. Hughley. Now, for every interview he's done, I didn't get it from nobody else's mouth. I watched it for myself. And I watched this brother sit down with that white cat, Vlad, and tell this white man all that I wasn't, as the white man told him all that me and my husband wasn't. And I watched D.L. Hughley go in.
Yeah.
See, and let me tell y'all, when I made that joke about you, D.L. Hughley, I didn't think you would get tender in your feelings because you made the comment about the baby stage names, and you said with names like that, don't you think they would wind up in jail? Well, that's what you said. Well, I thought I was coming back being clever, making a joke, because back in the day when somebody was on the DL, you know what they were. I don't think you're a homosexual man, DL. I was making a joke, and I can't believe you got tender. See, you got tender after you've talked for years. So let me be clear to you babies watching. Saturday night, I don't care where I went up on that stage, I was going to hand D.L. Hughley his ass. Because through the years, I've listened to this man speak so freely about my poor decisions, my life choices, and he spoke as if we had a conversation sitting down talking. See, y'all, I'm one of them old school kind of girls. I'm one of them old school, round the way, down the block kind of girls. And when you get invited to my home, that means something to me. And this was back in the day. This was back in the 90s. And I was opening up for D.L. Hughley. And I was excited. He was doing a comedy club in Upper Maryland. It was the night of a Mike Tyson fight. So no one showed up. 10 people showed up to the show. It was no judgment because everybody understood when Mike Tyson fight, the world shuts down. So for whatever reason, D.L. had the date. They booked me on the show with them. I'm excited. We get there. It's 10 people. I say, hey, D.L., so the night's not a total bust. Why don't you and your audience, because they came to see him, come on back to my home. We can watch the fight. I'll fix some food. Let's have a good time. So I invite this man back to my home. Now, I don't know about y'all, but my home is my sacred place. But I invite him and his audience back, so people wouldn't walk away disappointed that there was no show. So that's why I felt like from that moment to the moment I did his radio show and they tried to come with foolishness, I always thought D.L. Hughley and I were cool. Always. Never knew that he had so much to say. So that night, D.L., what you got back was the medicine that you've dished out to our community for so long through the years. And I want to address what you're trying to make the show out to be.
Now, as you all can see, Monique and her husband took to social media where she pretty much explained more of the reason as to why she went off on DL in the first place. She's dating things back to the 90s when she considered the both of them to be very good people. But over the years, he had a lot of negative things to say. So it seems like it was going to be smoke on sight, period, when it comes to Monique and DL. Okay, she was always planning on getting him back. If you speak on me publicly, I'm gonna make sure that I speak on you very, very publicly. And I guess she was just waiting on the opportunity to do it when they were on stage together. And maybe that's what DL felt was coming, which is one of the reasons why he kept trying to, put that to the side. Like, no, I don't want to do any shows with her. No, I'm not going to do any shows with her, because of all of the things that he's been saying out there in the streets about her. But, it makes sense that he would do it now, especially with the pandemic and things. A lot of people lost money. So, hey, why not go and get your money up at this time? Perfect opportunity for Monique to drag him literally all on that stage. Yeah, but here's my thing though, because I do have a little issue with what Miss Monique is saying. I do not like the fact that she made it appear as though the issue she has with him is because of the headliner title. That was a bit confusing for me. I was like, why is this a big deal? I was so confused, which is why I was slow to even do a video on this, because I was confused as to why is this even a big deal? Like, why do we even care about who was headliner, who wasn't? Both of y'all are successful. Both of y'all have coin, y'all have money, and you're still very relevant to this day. Why are we doing this? Well, I'm glad she ended up dropping this video, because now I see the real reason as to why she went off on him, and she was planning on doing this the whole time. It also makes sense as to why he did not talk to Monique, because Monique wasn't feeling him and Monique wasn't featuring him based on the things that he said about her over the years. Now, in the previous video, as you guys saw earlier, DL said that he didn't hear anything from Monique. He didn't even know there was a problem. Well, that's because she had no words for you and she was going to leave it all on the stage. So she's been building up this issue with him for many years. It was very interesting for me to hear that he had been saying so many things about her in different interviews. And I really found that to be, like I said, very interesting, considering the fact that one of the reasons he would not do the comedy shows with her was based on the things other people were saying. So you really didn't know a whole lot of what was going on with her situation, right? But you felt comfortable enough to talk about her in interviews, but then act as though when you get ready to do your shows, you wouldn't schedule any shows with Monique based on what other people were saying. And that's just really, really interesting too, because Monique is referencing in her sit down with her husband, she's referencing back in the 90s when they had this sit down and he put his feet under her table or whatever. Whereas it seems like with him, he's talking as though this was more recent and current events. He says that that's one of the reasons that he decided to accept this opportunity, because they were able to have a sit down and she seemed nice and all this or that. So it is a bit of somebody lying. Some of the milk is not clean for me. Some stories are not going in a straight line right now. They're just not going in a straight line for me. Yeah, Monique referenced something that was back in the 90s when this happened. So she always thought that they were cool. Whereas he does his sit down, and he's saying that that was one of the deciding reasons as to why he chose to actually move forward and do a comedy show with her. So it's just not making sense to me. But I will say that it's interesting that he would make a decision to not do a show with her based on what others are saying, but feel comfortable enough to go and have a sit down interview where he's discussing her negatively over the years and speaking down on her. Now, I have not heard these things. This is merely what Miss Monique is saying, and she's saying that these interviews are available to us here on YouTube. Now, comedian Lunell took to Ricky Smiley's morning show to share her thoughts about the situation, and she said a lot that I agree with, actually.
To be completely honest, as I started watching it, the word "here we go again" came into my mind. I really have been pulling from Monique this whole time, and I had told everybody, I said, everybody goes down, but everybody gets up, and somebody's going to give her a job. She's going to do something incredible, and she's going to be on everybody's tongues again. And that's what I truly believed when 50 came out and said he was going to have Monique join Black Mafia family. Then Lee Daniels came with his too much, too little, too late apology only after he heard about 50 messing with Monique. Then Lee came back, double back. So I thought that everything was going to be good. Personally, I couldn't care less about this funk because it seems very ego-based to me. I have been on shows before where the order or the lineup may not have been, I thought it was ridiculous because, first of all, I dare anybody to follow me, first of all. But I have been on shows with maybe what I thought was possibly a not as experienced or lesser known comedian. And then, if it don't affect my money, I will just go out there in whatever order you put me in, smash, and let you see what you can do. But what I would say with this situation seems more promoter-based than it does, well, I'm not following her. Well, let me go first. DL came up with paperwork that said he was headlining. But then Monique came up with paperwork that said she was headlining. So the fishy work, to me, seems like it is promoter-based. Right. And that it should not have been personally based with your fellow comic, These promoters can do shady things. Sometimes they messy. They might want to pit somebody against each other. And then it did. But actually, Monique's fight is not our fight. You understand? Why involve us every time you got a problem? Because, frankly, after so many problems, I'm going to speak for myself. After so many issues, publicly, I'm just not interested in hearing it anymore. It's sort of like the boy who cried wolf. Now she makes a lot of good points a lot of times, but right now I'm over the anger, and the anger is so palpable that bringing us into that is like somebody watching somebody get beat across the street, and it's not really a fight. You know what I'm saying? Right. It's too much for me. and I'm not going to be involved in it, and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to speak on it again except for your show.
But that's really all that I have about this situation. Just wanted to come to you guys, give you an update, let you know what's going on. It's been so much. I had to pull things together to make it somewhat fall in alignment so that you guys can understand what's happening from beginning to end. I really want to hear your thoughts about this situation. I'm not necessarily choosing a side on this, whether I'm Team Monique or I'm Team DL. I'm Team okay, right? I'm Team good luck. So I would love to know what you all's thoughts are. Are you Team somebody, Team someone else? Was DL wrong? Is Monique bitter? I'm hearing that being said a lot, where people feel as though, oh, she's bitter, she's holding on to something from years ago and whoop de whoop de whoop. And I'm like, are you guys catching the context of what it is that DL is saying is in his interview? Because he's not necessarily making any sense either. Okay, so something in the milk is not clean. Somebody on the stage is a liar. All right. Either way, these people will go on to do great things as they already have. So I guess this is just a moment in time, girl, in comedy history. But you guys go ahead and hop down in the comments, honey. That's all that I have for you guys today. I'm Jamie, that's me. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share my videos, honey. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Jamie, that's me. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.